house.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated, yes.
To our favorite shows.
Oh, my circuit!
Everybody loves Hypnotoad.
Scary dog!
Pearson and Blurnsville.
Futurama.
Good evening. You are listening to a Radulich and Broadcasting premiere podcast TV party tonight. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight, our favorite show is Cobra Kai, Season 3, brought to you by the good people at what used to be YouTube and is now Netflix, and a whole lot of other studios. I'm not reading all these, just Sony. Just know it's brought to you by Sony and Netflix. That's all that really matters here. Joining me tonight, we have yet another stacked panel. First, they are the Heart Foundation of the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. First, the Bret the Hitman Hart of the tag team. Ladies and gentlemen, Andrew Graham. How do you do, sir?
I do well, Mark, and that is probably far too high a praise for my my podcasting skills as to be compared to the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be.
Honestly, I was just trying to think of a Canadian tag team, and that was the first one that came to me.
I used to live 20 minutes from the Hart House, so...
You know what? You get to take on that...
The Thrill Seekers, the Suicide Blondes.
Asian Christian.
The Heart Foundation. Sorry. My at the condition that I'm in these days, my brain stops at about 89. Which makes him the Jim the Anvil Neidhart of this tag team. The other Canadian, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the show, David Wright. How do you do, sir?
I am striking hard, striking first, no mercy.
Indeed. And fresh off his successful defense of the Karate Kid 2010, he's back doing flip kicks and kicking me in the head. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Sean Comer. You're not. How do you do, sir?
Wait, so that's Brett. That's Neidhart.
And you're Jaden.
By default, I was gonna say, did you just by default declare me to be Pillman?
No, I called you Jaden Smith.
Ass.
You know what? He can be Davy Boy.
They just look fresh.
Not Hart Foundation, but married in. So
I don't know. How's your Cockney accent, Sean? Can you give me he fell on his arse?
For all the UK friends I have, you would think I would be able to by now, but no, I'm only cursing in Scottish at about a 5th grade level at this point.
Outstanding.
Could be worse. Your bloodline could be 99% English and you'd not be able to pull off a good English accent.
True.
Bollocks.
True.
All right, so the series started out on... Moving on. So the series started out on YouTube, and then for its third season, it moved over to Netflix. They ported the first 2 seasons, and it got kind of like a relaunch on Netflix, and the rest of the world sort of caught up to those of us who had watched it on YouTube. Yes or no? A quick around the table. Yes or no, Andrew? I believe the answer is yes here, but you watched it as it was coming out on YouTube, correct?
first season, yes. Second season, I got delayed a little bit just because I was waiting for them to all drop for free as opposed to having to sign up for another streaming service. But yeah, I kept up with those ones pretty much contemporaneously.
Same question, Dave. Did you follow along on YouTube or did you wait for Netflix?
Yeah, I was late to the party for season 1, so by the time so I watched it a bit later, but I just signed up for the free YouTube Red month and binged them all, and then, yeah, like Andrew with the second season, just waited until they released them for free.
How about you, Sean? Did you pick up on the series when it got ported to Netflix, or were you following along on YouTube?
I never had any intention on general principle of giving YouTube money. So, no, I just caught it. I had heard about it. It got rave reviews. I completely forgot about it. And then my jaw smacked me in the nuts when I looked at Netflix one day and saw that Cobra Kai was on there. And so I picked it up, watched the first season, and was instantly hooked. So...
all right, so the first season, which we've reviewed both seasons so far. First season, we talked about how great it was because it played around with the idea of what is the bully and what is the hero, and the lines are blurred and the world is gray, and we like that. It ended with Daniel's student, who is Johnny's son, losing in the tournament to Miguel, who is the student of Johnny. And again, Miguel's not all bad. What's his face? Danny's student, Robbie, is not all bad. They are both not all good either. They are, characters of gray. And we like that. And so we moved on to the second season. And, Johnny starts off with, hey, I know I said no mercy, and I was saying a lot of the same shit Kreese was saying, but as it turns out, that's wrong. And maybe don't cheat and beat the shit out of your opponents. Let's try to find the line here. And just as he's doing that, in walks Kreese, who was his coach in the first Karate Kid movie. And Kreese spends season 2 trying to ingratiate himself into the school, and there's a part of him that, wants Johnny and him to be a unit, to be together. And, a part of him that's like, well, if you're not going to play the game, who needs you? And he wants to take the school from him, which he inevitably does by the end of Season 2. Season 2 introduced Peyton List, who becomes the adversary for Daniel's daughter. And if you don't know who Peyton List is, she was on the Disney show Jessie, and then she was on the spin-off Bunked. And you would not believe that's the same gal. Holy cow. Real quick.
No.
Andrew, you've got kids. Have they ever watched Jessie or Bunked?
No, we haven't watched either of those. I think right now we're doing a lot of Raven's House and Good Luck Charlie and multiple rewatches of The Descendants.
If you ever have the opportunity to watch an episode or two of Bunked just to see like the stark difference in Peyton List's acting, it's pretty phenomenal. And I said something similar to Sean about the gal who starred in Jessie when she switched over to Insatiable. It's like, holy crap, these people like leave Disney shows and go on to do some pretty stellar things, some of them. Mm-hmm. Anyway, they introduced that character, season adversary for Daniel's daughter. And season 2 ends with the Cobra Kai dojo in a not rock'em sock'em knockdown drag out battle royal in the school with Miyagi-Do, which unfortunately ends with Robbie high kicking Miguel over a rail, and he falls to his doom. He cracks his back on the railing, and that is where Robbie goes off and running. And that is where season 2 ends. So season 3 picks up with what happened to Miguel. Out of guilt and frustration and self-loathing, Johnny threw his car away, left the dojo, and went to walk, into the woods to live deliberately. Daniel's wife yelled at him again and said, "No more karate for you." And his daughter got all scraped up with Peyton List's claw weapon thing. So, going into season 3, Andrew, what did you want to see happen? What were you expecting? Go ahead.
I think by and large what I was expecting was a lot of what we got, where it was going to be positioned much more along the lines of no longer this being as much between Johnny and Danny, but much more between Johnny and Danny in some way against Kreese. And I think that's a lot of what we got. It was interesting to see a couple of the turns that came in here with some of the younger characters. I think Sam was really interesting in terms of kind of her, I think, going down some of the bad places that her dad had gone, and some of the behaviors that he had learned. And I think in a lot of ways this season paid off a lot of those expectations.
What about you, Dave? What did you want to see happen in season 3? What were your expectations?
Well, yeah, like everyone else, it was the expectation that Johnny and Daniel would get together and sort of unify against Kreese. They'd finally bury the hatchet. And I have to give them credit for doing that fake out in the first episode, where if you watch the trailer, it's like, oh yeah, they're partnering up, but that only happens for the first episode, and then they're back to being rivals again. I thought that was sort of a good way of playing with the audience expectations there. And in the end of the season, they finally seemed to achieve that. Otherwise, I just wanted Miguel to be okay.
Yeah. I know I had a pretty like shocked reaction to that. Like, I was really surprised they went there with Miguel. Sean, you know, when he falls over the edge and hits his back, I actually thought the poor kid was fucking dead. And I'm like, wow, bold choice. So, you know,
it's like dead, paralyzed, or he'll be all right.
Hey, how do you come back?
I'll crawl
from
out of the pit to really rising Hans Zimmer music, and I'll be fine.
So go ahead,
those
Sean.
prisoners were just so supportive. They were the nicest people, really. Like, that World of Darkness was the most well-lit shot of the entire film.
Same to you, Sean. What were your thoughts going into season 3?
I mostly hope that Daniel would once and for all acknowledge, why, yes, I guess I am the asshole. Repeatedly.
Yeah, I would say an asshole. There can be more than one.
For the most part, he was consuming about 90% of the asshole energy for most of the series. Johnny may have been a little bit frustrated and clueless, but on some level, I always felt like he was acknowledging he was a dick. He was just struggling to understand some other way to live and how to fix it.
Yeah, he was kind of trying to dig himself out of the hole, but not really digging very fast. Whereas, Daniel's kind of a bit of a douche and just had to realize, hey, wait a minute, I'm kind of a bit of a douche.
Yeah, Daniel just he seemed up to that point to just almost get there with the epiphany. Almost. But you know what? It's a bit like the meme with the SpongeBob comic book villain. I forget his fucking name. And Patrick.
Sideshow Bob?
Plankton, is it?
No, not Plankton.
Just to clarify, I've never really watched SpongeBob, so.
Oh, you said SpongeBob. I don't know why I heard Simpsons. I'm sorry.
The foe of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. I can't remember his name, but he's like going back and forth trying to help Patrick see reason about something. And ultimately, the idea is right at the end, right when he thinks Patrick gets it, you know, Patrick just kind of goes off in left field and misses the point entirely. Daniel is Patrick. I know that was the most rambling bumblefuck explanation I could have come up with, but he almost gets there, and then just misses the point entirely, and it's right back to, you know what? Maybe you were the bad guy in the original trilogy.
That's what cracked me up about that first episode. They go to the PTA meeting, you know, and Daniel standing up and, you know, and sort of pleading his case, and somebody 80 yards, somebody off camera yells out, "I heard you were the bully." I mean, that's the great thing about this show.
The only thing that would have made that better is that was Neil Patrick Harris. Just to really pay off the whole joke about the origin of this. And I mean, I think I got a... Sorry?
So I said, no, I said, you know what? Like, you know what? That's a thought. I hadn't considered that.
I mean, I think I'm in agreement with Sean and Dave on this one. I mean, I think he does take up a whole bunch of the asshole percentage in this show. I think a lot of that is related to the fact that he just has this painful self-righteous streak. Like, he's always talking about, we've got to stop Cobra Kai, not really defining what the phrase "stop" means. And
like the fuck are you gonna do?
Yeah, exactly. You own a car dealership. You're not Batman. But I mean, he's got this entire self-righteous streak, which I think is maybe, and I think they even kind of work the way back through this, is that it's because he's always, whenever he's had that self-righteous streak when he was younger, is that he's been paid off as the hero, so he is doing it out of habit, for lack of a better phrase.
Also,
he's been enabled. Is what's happened. Is when, you know.
Yeah.
He's either had somebody there to balance him out. He's had a Miyagi there to be like, "You're being a dope. Settle down," or it works out for him, in which case he's enabled in thinking what I'm doing is the right thing.
Oh, exactly. And I mean, I think one of the key things about this show in terms of the character arcs and the character flaws for both Daniel and Johnny is their inability to let go. and it's the fact that they're kind of, and I take this from as a person who doesn't have a lot of fond memories of high school, and also 37, I don't have a whole lot of love for the 1980s either. I definitely don't have the level of nostalgia they do, but it's like these guys both refuse to let go and move on to the 21st century in a lot of ways. Like this was all great when I was a kid, and that was the high point, and nothing can change from that point moving forward. And that becomes a key of their conflicts. Sorry, Sean, go ahead.
When it comes to the actual focal grudge, though, I can see the argument as far as in terms of embracing fucking modernity. Yes, Johnny is still stuck in the 80s and to a lesser extent the 90s.
Hash brown nostalgia.
Hash brown nostalgia.
Send it to the internet.
But when it comes to the actual focal grudge of the whole thing, I always got the impression that Johnny didn't like Daniel and really didn't so much have an interest in making peace as he would just as soon rather just be left alone. And Daniel can just never quite seem to do that. And so finally, almost out of frustrated resignation, Johnny fires back at Daniel.
Well, that's actually actually a great point. There's a conversation he has with Elizabeth Shue, which we need to talk about, and we're kind of bouncing all over here, and then that's fine. I don't need to do this so super structurally. But there's a conversation he has with Elizabeth Shue that I really like, and he talks about how, he graduated from high school, and, he knocked up this girl, and he tried to make it work, and when it fell apart, he just kind of went in a hole, and life went on without him. And he didn't want to engage, he didn't want to engage with life anymore. Life didn't seem to need him, and he just was in, stuck in this perpetual, day in, day out, go out, do enough of a job to pay your rent, go home, drink beer, watch Iron Eagle, go to bed. Same, rinse, repeat. And he talked a lot about that with Elizabeth Shue's character, and how meeting Miguel and doing Cobra Kai, he kind of pulled himself out of that. And now he's at a crossroads over, well, what do I do? Who am I? Especially because I haven't bothered to grow or define myself in any kind of way over the past decade.
I think with Johnny, it's sort of his life just kind of fell apart after losing the tournament to Daniel, and like you say, he's never really moved on from that. He's just been sort of coasting through life.
He talked about partying. He partied through his 20s, and then he just sort of existed.
Yeah, which it happens, right? You're the popular kid in high school, and then you don't really develop anything after that, and you just kind of end up partying, making some poor life choices, and then here you are in your 40s, with a kid that hates you, divorce, working dead-end jobs, whatever. But with Johnny, sort of at the start of the show, he sort of realizes, Cobra Kai, that was like the best thing in my life until Daniel ruined it for me. I'm going to go back to that, and now I'm going to be the teacher through his relationship with Miguel. It's like, hey, I can teach this new generation how to be badasses, just like I was a badass. Whereas with Daniel, it's more, he's, life's going great. He's found his calling as a car salesman. He's got the wife. He's got the money. He's living the life. And then he just sees Cobra Kai's back. It's like, oh no, not again. I can't let this come back. And that just sets him off. And like you've been saying, he's just so self-righteous about, Cobra Kai is bad because, that's the side of Cobra Kai he's seeing. I must stop this at all costs without sort of realizing that Johnny's just doing this because this was, he just sees the good things that he got from Cobra Kai, and it's not until the end of first season where he realizes that, strike hard, strike fast, not so bad, no mercy. Maybe some problems with that. I mean, we're kind of lucky we've made it to the end of season 3 without any homicides yet.
Wow, there was a close one there with Hawk and Miguel, for that matter.
Oh, we got almost attempted murder, definitely manslaughter, but like Tori, if Sam hadn't managed to pull a win off at that last minute, she might have just killed her. She's got the madness.
I don't know how many seasons this is going to go, but this has to end with Tori and Sam, right? just this has to like the very last thing we see is Sam and Tori, fighting each other in a tournament, and Sam wins. There's no other way this series can end. Maybe I don't know. But I think just to be fair to Danny, it's not like he's the most introspective, investigative fella, and from his perspective,
he's a hothead.
Well, I mean, from his perspective, these jerks were learning from this crazy person to bully people, and he was a target. And so he's not going to think about like Johnny's life or how Johnny was affected or where this was all coming from. I mean, the great thing about season 3 is you get some indication as to why Kreese is the way that he is. And that's what's kind of nice about this show in general, is that it shows you all these different perspectives, and it doesn't necessarily say, feel bad for this person, they had it rough. But it does say, well, here's at least an explanation for why they are the way they are. They're not just mustache-twirly villain here, or superhero. They are complex people who sometimes make poor decisions. But, from it takes Danny a little while to come around the bend, and see that Johnny was as much a victim of his situation as he was. And there's a couple of different times that they come together and they get over that. They do it on the date in season 1. They do it right before the season finale in season 2, and then they do it in the Elizabeth Shue episode. This is 3 times now that Israel and Palestine came together and made peace. Go ahead, Andrew.
I was going to say, and Dev, I mean, going back to your point and going a bit further back to Danny again, I mean, one thing that this series works with, and I mean, realistic or not, is that it's definitely pulling people from a point of trauma. And I mean, when you look at the way, when Danny first sees that Cobra Kai is back, if I remember right, going back to season 1, they throw in a whole bunch of flashbacks of the first movie and all the back and forth that he had with Johnny at the time. And they're framing it as a traumatic experience for him. So, I mean, in some ways he is having a visceral reaction, but 2 seasons on, he's got to get over himself.
That's the problem is, and I want to get Sean in here. He's been quiet for a little while. But I think it's, the thing about this show is that it's kind of like a heartbeat monitor. It goes up and it goes down, it goes up and it's down. And so, as I just said, there are moments when Danny and Johnny are able to make peace with one another, but then there's an inciting incident that happens. And, I think it's in the first season, you have the bit with Robbie and Sam where they're out all night and Danny kicks in Johnny's door. This is after they just had the date. Season 2, something else happens. I don't remember what exactly, but
I think the Robbie Sam thing was season 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then season 3, what do you call it? They have the dinner with Elizabeth Shue at the club at the country club, and they make peace, and then right after that is or while that's happening, there's the fight in the house, followed by Johnny going to the dojo to beat the shit out of Kreese, followed by Danny showing up, and we got to talk about this. So this is a good transition point. Followed by Danny showing up and pulling off the stunt that he learned in Japan early on in the season, followed by them making amends and being coaches together. Co-senseis. One thing I want to say real quick, and then Sean, I'll pitch it over to you for your thoughts, is one of the things I liked about this was Miguel kind of getting in Johnny's face and saying, you sit here and you talk about, being lost and you don't know yourself and you don't know what happened to your life. You know what you are? You're a sensei. No matter what you do, no matter where you go, no matter what's going on in your world, you are in fact a teacher. You are somebody who needs to be imparting some degree of knowledge. That's what you're good at. That's what Miguel says to Johnny, and that's part of what moves Johnny forward in season 3. Sean, we threw a lot out there. We talked a lot about Johnny and Danny, and I want to move on to Danny in Japan. But is there anything out of this great big conversation we've been having that you wanted to talk about?
Well, what I like about the idea that Johnny has this profound inner teacher is that in a way he really is sort of, if not the yin to Daniel's yang, he's at least a little bit of a contrast. because Daniel is an effective teacher because he's teaching from a place of a lot of wisdom that he's devoutly absorbed over the years and has devoted much of his life to understanding well enough, even if he's a little bit blind sometimes to how to put it into practice. On the other hand, with Johnny, you have somebody who maybe sometimes doesn't understand the most effective ways to reach people, but he does have this just kind of unpolished, inherent, kind of inspiring drive when he's really going, when he's really behind something.
I mean, he will light your leg on fire to motivate you.
Yeah, in a way, exactly.
Not in a way, exactly.
Yeah. He has a way of being able to just even if it's unpolished, even if it's rough around the edges, even if it's not really displaying great insight into the human condition, or really kind of reading how somebody is best going to learn something, he's still able to just kind of speak from that contagious inner fire. It's the kind of charisma that if you're looking for a real world example, it's kind of like when you hear people describe having an in-person encounter with Arnold Schwarzenegger or Bill Clinton. That ability to just light a fire under your ass. That's what he really does well, and that's why I find the idea of these two being co-senseis so intriguing, because here they've been kind of successfully reaching their students in their own ways on sort of opposite sides of the battle. And so now in season 4, we're finally going to get to see what the dynamic is like when you have two people who all this time have kind of been counteracting each other, and now they have a chance to really shore up each other's weaknesses against somebody who really only has dimensions of manipulation and ruthless brutality.
I want to talk about, we need to talk about so many other characters, but I want to get this out there because it was probably my favorite part of the entire season, besides I Heard You Were the Bully. It really did crack me up. Danny, one of the subplots of this is that because of the fight has sort of affected all these other facets of these people's worlds. One of which is people don't want to do business with Danny because they think he's part and parcel of the problem that caused the fight that ended with the kid getting paralyzed, at least temporarily. So his dealership's not doing well. And on top of which, his rival has made it so that he can't get a stock of cars in to sell. And so he's going to go out of business, and this guy's trying to absorb his business, his rival, and what is Danny going to do? So Danny goes to Japan to meet with the manufacturer to see if he can fix it. But while he's there, he runs into the entire cast of The Karate Kid Part 2. And
I did not see that coming.
This is my favorite part of the season, and I want to get your guys' reaction to this. We'll roundtable this part. I loved his conversations with Andrew. Help me. What was the girl's name? The girlfriend in the movie. Kimiko. Or something
I'm
like that?
trying to look that one up
Kimiko.
right now.
It is Kimiko.
I think it's Kimiko.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love his conversations with Kimiko, and how, what happened. She, the line that she says to him is great. She was like, well, no one's ever fought to the death for me before. Really like re-illustrating just how much danger Danny was in when he fought Chosen. And, but, the even better part of that episode was until the very end, you don't know where Chosen and Danny are going. You don't know what Chosen's doing. They do the thing where they build up, Chosen taking Danny out, and like, oh God, is he taking revenge on Danny? And he gets him back, and he does the nose thing, and he was like,
I fell off my couch when I saw that. I laughed so hard.
It was great. But the point of all of that was, one, we talked about this before, that sometimes Danny, the way that he's written is he goes off the deep end and he needs somebody to reel him back in. His wife does an okay job of it. Mr. Miyagi used to be the main person that did that. And in this season, they set it up with Chosen is the one that sort of brings him down a peg and says, hey, stupid. I understand you think you know everything, but hey, there's a whole other world out there that you don't know about, and this is part of it. And so I thought that was great. I thought, and of course they pay it off at the very end because he does the same shit to Kreese that Chosen did to him. But I really, David, I really, really, really enjoyed that part of it, and I tell you, I think it was the high point of the season for me. What did you think?
Well, I almost fell off of my couch when they pulled away to reveal that the Toyota building was like the Tokyo Metropolitan Government building with Toyota photoshopped onto the top of it.
Yeah, and Dave has some first-hand experience here. I think Dave, you should elaborate upon that.
Well, for starters, I've actually been to that very building. There's an observation deck on, I think, the 47th floor that's free to access. Quite nice little gift shop, cafe, good view of the city. But so yeah, I thought that was just hilarious. I mean, that's sort of the equivalent of if you say, "Oh, I need to go to Paris to have a meeting with this company," and find out that their office is in the Eiffel Tower. Like they just, CG, the sign onto the side. So, I mean, yeah, it's not an internationally famous building, but it was like, yeah, I know exactly where that is, and it's not the headquarters of a car company. I'm also impressed how apparently every single person Daniel meets in Japan speaks very good English. As a former English teacher, that seemed to be a bit of a stretch. Although it's not quite as bad as the scenes in Karate Kid 2 where you have two Japanese people talking to each other in English and Daniel's not there. It's like, why are they speaking in English with each other? Like, that's not how this works. But I digress. But yeah, I thought it was a nice scene. It was kind of... him meeting up with Kumiko was nice. Certainly the emotional hit of that moment where he gets the letter from Mr. Miyagi and he finds out how Daniel always viewed Mr. Miyagi as sort of his guiding force in his life, and him realizing that no, Mr. Miyagi he viewed Daniel as the guiding force in his life, like just always whatever Daniel needed was sort of what he needed to do. But just as for the being in Japan part of things, there wasn't sort of anything sort of too uniquely like super Japan there. They were mostly there for the story.
Awfully convenient that the girl he saved on the telephone pole in the storm turns out is some higher up in the car company, and like, I'm going to save your company. Well, of course you are a Deus Ex Japanese person.
And he just happens to meet Kumiko at the festival presentation that day, or that Chosun happens to teach him a technique that is very useful against an enemy that will never stop fighting.
the show suffers from a bit of convenience, but I'll allow it. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah. This technique is especially effective against dojos that use like some sort of snake as their logo.
Deus Ex.
Yeah, I'm going to jump on the convenience train here. Okinawa is, I'm not sure, but it's at least a several-hour flight in the wrong direction from Tokyo. So it's
Okinawa
like
is pretty out of
Hawaii.
Yeah, it's a very out of the way place. I mean, it's a very popular place to go, like great beaches, lots of surfing, and so on. But yeah, it's to go from Tokyo to Okinawa. That's a trip.
I was about to say, I think Southern California does a better job of impersonating Okinawa than it does of impersonating Vietnam, but we'll get to that episode later.
Staying with you, Andrew, any thoughts about the interactions with Johnny and Kimiko and Johnny and Chosen?
You mean Danny?
That's the one.
Okay. I overall enjoyed those episodes. I mean, yeah, any kind of nitpicks aside, I think the drama of it worked out well. this happened twice this season, and it's kind of a cliche I don't love, but it's like, wait a second, he's reaching for Kumako's hand, and then Chosen walks in, and it's like, Danny, you're not about to do something stupid, are you? But once Chosen got in there, and the start of the follow-up episode where those two are talking, and it's like, I need another drink. Well, I'll go. Like, no, I will get it. The whole kind of passive aggressiveness leading up to the eventual kind of fight between the two of them, and the nose honk was so well built. It was so funny. It built the tension up well, and when that nose honk happened, like I said, I fell off the couch because it was that funny.
You should have seen your face.
Apparently, by the way, guy owns one of the best Japanese restaurants in Seattle.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Interesting.
And actually, story again, something other weird trivia. Kumiko was actually a part of the electoral college this election cycle. She was one of the California representatives. Yeah,
Oh, good for her. So Sean, Daniel's trip to Japan, what'd you think?
Well, first of all, I was just amazed, gobsmacked at the incident of international commerce ignited by one pants-on-head Nanners high school brawl.
Wait, you're not going to do business with this guy. He's crazy. Well, what did he do? Well, he taught karate to some people, and they got into a fight with some other people. You're right. Fuck that guy.
Japan is always portrayed, my understanding has always been rightfully so, of this bastion of kind of stalwart decorum.
Pretty accurate.
Yeah, and a very strongly enforced kind of code of conduct, especially in the business world. And yet, I'm just imagining that when this guy walks into the boardroom, before he even gets a word out of his mouth, there's somebody who just loses his collective shit and just says, "No, I see that fight on YouTube. Most anime shit I have seen in my life." But it ended up being a really nice diversion. Hang on.
Yeah, I'll just hop in here. Yeah, it sort of gives Daniel that guidance that he needs. He needs someone sort of at a higher level than him to sort of help him straighten things out and point him in the right direction.
It happens early enough on in the series in season 3 that, in the beginning, so much of season 3 is dedicated to getting Miguel out of the bed, out of the chair, and finally walking again, and rebuilding his relationship with Johnny. Johnny, regaining his confidence. You needed Daniel to go on this trip. Like this was smart writing. They needed to give something Danny. There needed to be consequences for what happened in season 2, not just for Samantha and for Robbie, but for Danny as well. And they start off with him going after Robbie, and he's like, no matter what happens, I got to save Robbie, which, blows up in his face. But then after that, it was like, well, what are you going to do with Danny to where he really feels the consequences of his actions from the previous 2 seasons? And I thought it was a good idea for them to, as silly as it was still a good idea for them to put his dealership in jeopardy and then force him to go to Japan, and it's that recentering that he goes through, and the humility that he goes through, in out in the woods with Chosen. I think these were important parts of season 2, and without them, I don't think season 3, and without them, I don't think the season would have been nearly as strong. Andrew, what do you think?
I totally agree. I think on some level you need to split those characters up and not always have them coming back into conflict with each other. So, giving Danny this kind of side quest, for lack of a better word, to go and kind of right himself out of place from being in conflict with Johnny, I think was a really smart decision. If anything, for pacing.
See, and I agree. I thought that, yeah, Mark, I'm back. You know, it served as a nice reminder that although so much of this series, rightfully so, because, you know, it is called Cobra Kai, is rooted in the first movie, it was a nice reminder that the Miyagi-verse kind of spanned more than one movie. And that while the other two movies were, I think, unquestionably objectively inferior to the first one, that there was still some good character building material to be mined there. So it was nice to kind of see him go in that other direction of kind of revisiting the Karate Kid Part 2 and bringing that full circle. Both because, yeah, as we established, much as it did in that movie, you know, that was a movie where Daniel kind of had some humility literally beaten into him. And here he is kind of needing that very same reality check once more. And yeah, the introduction of Chosen in particular, what was such a pleasant surprise. And just it was a change of scenery. It got us away from the kids for a little bit. It got us away. It got us away from Johnny. It was just a needed breath of fresh air the entire way around that kind of allowed everything to kind of pick up after that and feel really kind of re-energized.
All right, so we do need to talk about the kids, and Miguel is actually kind of minimized in this season. There's a lot of balls in the air. There's a lot going on. It doesn't seem like they introduced more characters, but it feels like the characters they did have had more to do. And so Miguel, who went from being the star in season 1, I felt was very minimized in season 3. There's a lot of him. They spend a good first half of this, I think, of him and Johnny just doing stuff to get him out of the chair. I mean, don't get me wrong. I loved what I saw. I didn't have a craft problem with it, and I think there was a nice tight arc there with him feeling sorry for himself and feeling angry, and and Johnny going, "This is bullshit. Don't be a pussy. Get up and walk," and he falls and all of that, and then he stopped making it about the rehab. It was like, just relax and have fun, and it will eventually come back to you, which I don't think has any grounding in science, but whatever. I don't care.
No.
I'm okay with by the power of Twisted Sister, he can walk again.
If Mr. Miyagi rubbing his hands together can heal most injuries, Dean Schneider can make people walk again.
Dee Snider yelled out, "I want to walk. Yeah, I want to rock," and he went, "Yeah," and stood up and cheered and woo. I believe that. Sure.
Yeah. He was just sitting there like, yeah. I'm not going to take it anymore.
It's the price you got to pay, and all the games we got to.
Some random guy can knock vertebrae back into place for Bruce Wayne. Miguel can walk by way of Dee Snider.
No, Mr. Wayne, I don't think you should go spelunking.
When Cobra Kai says, "You have my permission to die." That was a shitty band impression. I apologize.
Yeah, it was like, somebody call Robert Cooper. If anyone's going to do Bane on this show. I was born in the darkness, Batman. All right. Do you want to build a snowman? Now that we've done the hits and got bingo on the card. Anyway, Andrew, your thoughts on Miguel this season? I threw out there I thought he was minimized. And even towards the second half, as they're doing Dosi Dojo, moving from here to there and everywhere, and Dosi Sensei, he has one kind of moment at the very end where him and the Asian kid who had been bullying him are facing off in the house, and and the kid's really giving him the works, and finally Miguel sort of gets his shit together and he comes back and he beats him up. So that's a great moment for Miguel, but like in between I can walk again and that moment, meh. So go ahead, Andrew. Your thoughts on Miguel this season?
I think I'm generally in line, and I think the thing was that there was a lot of talking about Miguel and action around Miguel. There wasn't a lot going on with him. I do totally agree with you that the moment that he kind of has his comeback during the last fight is really, really great and dramatically really strong. But yeah, I kind of agree with you on that one. And I mean, I think again, a lot of that happened to be a lot of what was going on was either loaded to a couple of moments in the first half of the season, and then really a few towards the back. That said, I mean, we did see some growth from him in terms of him becoming more of a leader in the studio, kind of reasserting that position in a lot of ways, and coming from a different position with it, where I think, you know, the no mercy part of it that I think affected him negatively in season 1 was kind of gone, and there was some maturing on his part. But I think you're right. He definitely got less screen time and maybe less development this season.
Sean, your thoughts on Miguel?
Not really much. Not really much. He got a pretty satisfying arc, I thought, throughout the course of the season. And to be honest, I really didn't mind that not as much of the focus was on him. It kind of felt a little bit. What's the word I'm looking for? Odd, surprising, a little bit jarring that in the entire fight he was the one who really suffered the worst for all of it.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And not only is he the one who really kind of adjusts best to life in the aftermath, it kind of comes away. He's the one who most comes away a better young man for it all. But you know, there's obviously the moments where he kind of feels a little bit shat upon by everybody else, that kind of compared, or not by everyone else maybe, but sometimes by others who walked away much, much less scathed from the whole thing than he did. Like I mean, Tori in particular, it kind of made me go, okay, are you really taking into consideration what this guy's been through compared to you?
Yeah.
You know, you lost a fight and you're on probation. Okay, noted. He could have been killed.
Right.
At best wheelchair bound.
Right. And ultimately she's still just mad at a girl for having the audacity to be found pretty by others. That's that's kind of like my big issue with Tori is, really, you're not going to let that go, are you?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the big thing, where I know that for the sake of drama, it's got to be what it's got to be. You've got to have a kind of the angst, the tension, and everything. But at the same time, you also can't help kind of looking at it as a real person in the real world and go, do any of you have any sense of perspective? I mean, you're still carrying on Chopsaki West Side Story. and this guy's life was, if not irrevocably nearly altered, nearly snuffed out, and you're over here still going on about some petty bullshit that happened at a party. You're not sitting here going, maybe we're taking this a little bit far.
There are no other boys left in the world. She took the only one, Sean. Don't you understand?
Yeah, you still got a mad on at this guy because he won't choose your dojo over the other ones. You don't think that maybe everything he's been through might kind of color his choice, and you've got to kind of maybe say to yourself, I don't really know what he's been through, and I'm kind of glad for that. Maybe I gotta just kind of respect this and move on.
Dave, your thoughts on Miguel?
Even though he didn't have as much screen time in this season, I quite liked his arc. Of course, again, I was cheering for him to get back on his feet and be okay, and that happened, and I thought it was sort of well done how they introduced it bit by bit, and sort of using his recovery as the main stumbling block for his character. Once he gets back on his feet, he still can't do a proper kick, and it's sort of through being exposed to these other fights, especially with Kyler, the bully that sort of started everything off in the first season, and that sort of being the payoff is just through him trying to deal with the situation, he makes the connection and is able to make the high kicks again. But yeah, I just kind of liked it in that he seems to have sort of found his center more or less in this season. Like he seems more confident in himself. He's not going off the handle. It's kind of nice that he gets back to school and Hawkster's like, yeah, don't worry, man. I broke Dimitri's arm for you. He's like, you what?
Yeah.
Like what the heck? Things are going out of control here. I was the one that was paralyzed, and geez, I didn't even want that.
Well, that's actually a great transition because that brings up what I want to talk about next. The person who jumped up and like we talk about in wrestling, someone going for that brass ring or getting themselves over, taking the opportunity when the window opens and jumping through it. Fucking Hawk, man. Holy cow. Like, he really stepped up this season, and granted, it's a fictional show. They wrote him that way. But the character, I thought, really came alive in this season. And here's the one thing. I said on the Rise of Skywalker review, Andrew, that had they not killed Kylo Ren, spoilers, that if Rey had sort of arm in arm walked him back into the Resistance, how the hell could he have possibly been met with anything but, people wanting to pull their guns out and shoot him, considering all he had done up to that point? It was. I remember talking at length about that, and I was thinking about Hawk in this season, about how he's broken Dimitri's arm unnecessarily. He's gone around using Miguel's paralysis as a reason to bully people. He's beat one poor kid's fucking face in. I mean, maybe the kid had it coming. He was another sect of bullies, but still, like he became a very rough, ridiculous character. And then at the end, he has like a moment, a moment of like crisis of conscience, and decides he's switching sides. And he looks over at Dimitri and says, "Hey, want to beat these guys up together?" And Dimitri, with the formerly broken arm, says, "Yeah." And I'm like, how? I was like,
he took that well.
I was like, boy, are you forgiving? You are with Christ, my friend.
Yeah, you know what? It's not even with a Megatron Optimus Prime. This doesn't change anything. Little codicil act to it, added to it. It's just,
I love you, my friend.
One high five and they're bros again.
Yeah, I love you, my friend. Come back to me. I'm like, you're awfully forgiving, sir. There's a lot to like about the show's writing, Andrew, but there are moments where I'm just like, wow, y'all don't give a shit, do you? You're like, and so he does, and then he does.
Yeah, you know what? I probably didn't think about that scene as much when I saw it. I mean, I liked it. I'm like, oh hell yeah, good stuff. Because I think on some level, I'll talk about this a little bit. I think it's hard for me to talk about Hawk without talking about Eli, because I think they both started in the same place and they went in very different directions. I think, overcorrection, thy name is Hawk, because he was the kid that was picked on. He was the guy that was bullied. And, I mean, you can say what you will when he was with Johnny, getting the Hawk and getting the tattoos and everything, and becoming mini Johnny in a lot of ways. He was still at his core somebody who was good and someone who was loyal. And I mean, this is going to eventually stave off into a conversation around Kreese. But when you put somebody who's looking for that guidance with somebody that toxic, and I use that word very, very deliberately, they can go the other way, where they go from they do turn into that bully. And I mean, I think it probably was, they didn't devote as much time as they needed to it, but I think from the point that he broke Dimitri's arm, between the interactions with Miguel and some of the other behaviors and things like that, I think you started to see that Hawk was moving back to a place where he's like, this isn't a good situation. And
don't get me wrong, I'm okay with the crisis of I'm okay with the everything leading up to his crisis of conscience. That made sense. That Dimitri was so forgiving instantaneously, and they don't even come back to, like, I'm still mad at you, but we're in the middle of a fight, so whatever. Like, that's the one thing I drew a circle on and went, nope. Try again, guys.
Yeah, I mean, the Johnny's book is not the best time to have a long, involved morality conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
like everyone's getting their ass kicked around you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, you're switching sides. I will take that for the time being, because there were a lot of them, and we'll talk about that fight scene. And actually, I thought it was pretty damn good. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, I hope they do develop a little bit more on that, because I think, you know, if we want to talk about what season 4 is going to look like, I think the fact that you're still going to have conflicts between the various studios, and you're going to have with dojos and the various instructors and things like that, and that's still going to be a part of it. I hope they do talk about Hawk and him looking back on some of those past decisions with a little bit more retrospect.
I'm sure they will.
But I enjoyed his arc, and I think I kind of enjoy him as a morality tale as well.
Go ahead, Dave. I know you were fighting to get in there.
Yeah, I think Andrew kind of touched on quite a bit of it, but yeah, it's kind of what he said is, you know, huge fights breaking out. You know, like Team Miyagi-Do, Eagle Fang is not winning right now, so Hawk wants to switch sides. Okay, let's finish the fight. We can deal with our emotional baggage afterwards when we're less likely to get like murdered.
Yeah,
but, I was actually quite surprised that Hawk did do the. I'm not sure if a face turn is a thing, but you know, at the end.
No,
but
you
could even see it when he breaks Dimitri's arm in the first place. There's that moment of hesitation. It's like, oh, geez, you know, like this seems a bit far, but you know, no mercy. And then afterwards, even he sort of has a bit of regrets towards that, and probably even seeing Miguel's reaction to it is like, you know, yeah, like maybe we're the baddies.
Well, the big arc of this season, one of them is him constantly going to Kreese is changing the dojo. He's molding it into something that Hawk isn't totally in line with, you know, and so little by little, the dojo is moving away from where Hawk is. And then, so by the end of it, when he suddenly realizes that these guys are the people he went to Cobra Kai to fight to begin with, and now he's, you know, through this weird transition, he's forced to be on their side, and he realizes he doesn't want to be one. You know, it isn't even so much that he doesn't want to be a bully; he doesn't want to be one of those guys specifically.
It's like I'm literally fighting on the same team as Kyler, who is beating up my old best friend that we went to take karate to get away from in the first place. It's like I think he signs up with Kreese initially because Kreese sort of takes him under his wing and sort of is like, you're the new Miguel. So he gets a sort of bit of an ego boost. But then once Kreese starts, like letting go other students and bringing in all the bullies.
The other thing about Hawk is the inner realization that nobody loves that. As long as there's a better person that they can glom onto, nobody loves Hawk. Like, Hawk's great if there isn't a Tori around, or a Robbie, or a Tyler. and go ahead.
Yeah, also should give a point out that when he goes to confront Johnny and the Eagle Fang dojo in the park, or sorry, it's before that, when Johnny's telling them in the school, and then Hawk gives him some sass. He's like, hey, look, I made you who you are. Not Kreese. He's twisting you into something else. Like, maybe think about that. So I think that's sort of, in that moment, those words kind of really hit home.
That's what I'm saying. Like, everything, all of those things that we just talked about that lead up to him changing sides in the fight, I'm okay with. I'm literally like, Sean, I'm literally like looking at Dimitri going, okay. Yeah, I don't quite understand how you like. I get what Dave and Andrew are saying. Like, it was in the middle of a fight. It was more of I accept you helping me kick ass, not I love you and let's get married. But I think it's the way it played in the scene.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not like mid axe kick. Hawk is pausing to go. So really, Doctor's a woman now? How's that working?
To be fair, there are probably some people that had that a level of reaction to that news that would do that.
A few.
Yeah, I was being a little hyperbolic there, but
like fucking howler monkeys with hemorrhoids, the Whovians became.
But yeah, we'll have to see if they address it in season 2 at all, or sorry, season 4.
And if they do, I take it all back.
You know what? I don't think you can get around addressing it at some point. I kind of just thought of something. Well, a couple things actually. First of all, Kreese is Palpatine. Miguel is Maul. Hawk is Dooku. Robbie is Vader.
No, Tori is Vader.
Do you think it's going to be Tori or it's going to be Robbie?
Sean, I would bet the entire podcast network and all of its worth that this thing comes down to Tori and Sam. I made a joke about it before, but I'm dead serious. I don't see. What kills me is that we have plans to go all the way through Cobra Kai season 6. I'm like, please don't. End this fucking thing at 4 because you're going to run out of story real fast. And it's funny. I watched the Midnight's Edge retrospective on the Karate Kid, and one of the problems Ralph Macchio had with this was he was fucking 30, and they were still calling him the Karate Kid, and he was like, no, I'm not 17 anymore. Haven't been for 13 years now. And I meant to bring up that point where we talked about Jaden. Of course, he had to be 12. They were planning on sequels, and they didn't want him to age out just as fast. But anyway,
Tori is maybe a Saj Ventress.
Well, Tori has at least been consistent throughout the entire series so far. She wants to solve all her problems with homicide. Whereas at least Robbie's kind of gone back and forth between the two. Robbie has it in him. Robbie has it in him to kind of say oh, wait a minute, I think I'm actually going a bit too far, despite my issues. Yeah, right. maybe this isn't a good idea. Tori's just I've already tried to kill someone once for making eyes at my boyfriend.
That's why I said Robbie is pretty much Vader. Tori is Asajj Ventress or maybe General Grievous.
I'm going to go with Boba Fett.
And Hawk is Star Killer. He is. Think about it.
Okay, now let's do which members of the Horsemen are they? No.
Anyway, but the other thing is I don't know if it was. Yeah, I highly doubt that any such deep commentary was intended. But man, Hawk just kind of becomes a microcosm for every fucking thing that tragically goes inadvertently sideways in the course of the evolution of nerd culture.
Oh yeah,
he really is.
All right, if there's nothing else on Hawk, we should probably talk about Sam. Andrew, Sam had a really nice PTSD arc this season. She got messed up pretty good by Tori, and she becomes the bully because she wasn't quite there. The first season, she's sort of it's a Romeo and Juliet with her and Miguel. Second season, Sean put it, West Side Story with Tori, and in this one, she's now a part of the clique that's getting bullied by the Cobra Kai folks, and there's a bunch of different scenes where she's got some degree of confidence. She was wanting to fight back. She ain't going to take it anymore. And then Tori enters the frame, and she shuts down. There's the bit in the arcade with Dimitri. Towards the end, she's having difficulties until she can turn that around. She has this big meltdown in front of her mom where she's like, I can't. While Danny is in Japan, she has this meltdown with her mom about how she just can't handle life right now. And I actually thought, giving a kid a half a degree of PTSD from all the things that happened to her and having her go through all those machinations. I thought they actually wrote that well, and I thought the actress handled it well. What did you think of Sam this season?
Agreed. I mean, I think going back, because I think I was part of the season 1 review on this, and I've always liked Sam as a character. I thought they've written her very well, and I think this was definitely a strong arc, and the actress involved definitely did a great job on playing it. And I think it was, I mean, you kind of laid it out. There was this really interesting cyclical arc for her where she was initially dealing with the trauma of what had happened during the end of season 2 fight. And then, I think I alluded to this earlier, she kind of turns into Danny. She gets on this really kind of morally superior high horse, and it's like, we got to stop Cobra Kai. We got to stop Cobra Kai. We got to stop them from everything doing that. And I think it maybe the second time when it happens to Dimitri, she finally starts to clue in a little bit that violence has consequences. That among those things, fear is one of those consequences. And I thought they showed her shutting down during the arcade fight, and they showed her having that dream at the start of the following episode where Tori just messes her up, and just the breakdown in front of her mother of not being able to deal with that. I mean, on some level, I think it's kind of an emblematic with the problem of this whole series, where you've got all these people bringing in and trying to put all this stuff on their kids, whether it be Danny or Johnny or Miguel or Robbie, and where they continue to kind of get stuck in these cycles of putting this back on their kids, and their kids trying to just be kids and dealing with it. But it's I thought overall it was a really
high
good
school's,
arc. I thought the end fight.
High school's hard enough without being in the middle of a dojo war.
Oh, yeah, and that was one of the things that I thought was really strong about that first season, and it continued through the second, is showing how brutal high school is, and I think how brutal high school is today with social media and things like that, and good God, am I worried for my daughter in about 5 or 7 years. But anyway, I mean, I thought that was really well done. I did like the end kind of turnaround for her in the fight against Tori. I mean, obviously they set it up with some good old do some chores, and now you're doing Karate Kid stuff. I'm not going to comment on that. We're suspending disbelief for the moment on some of that stuff. But overall, I mean, really, really good work from her. I also have to bring this up because I couldn't fit it in during the last conversation, but something, All Valley Karate Tournament. Something complete.
I have to say, the woman that runs the meeting where they're talking about ending the karate tournament, and Miguel gives his speech and Sam gives her speech, and she just sort of looks at them, and she says probably the most 2021 thing I've ever heard. I know we just started the year, but it is such a comment of the moment. I don't understand the Valley's fascination with karate, but if this means that much to you, sure.
Can we have a quick conversation about what the economics are of the Valley and what percentage of that is tied up in karate dojos?
I think they made that up for the show.
Okay, I have to, and yet this leads to a sidebar that I just have to drag the show kicking and screaming over to, because it's something that just keeps kind of sticking in my mind, and I hesitate to call it a negative, but just something that's just so bizarre to me. David, you have some firsthand experience, quite a bit actually, with Japanese culture.
Yeah.
Okay. Andrew, you really know your stuff as far as MMA and a lot of martial arts are concerned. So here's kind of what I'm thinking.
Been around for a while.
Here's kind of what I'm thinking. First off, one of the things that I've always heard about karate in general, and I am not knocking it, I am just passing along what I've heard. Please do not dick kick the messenger. Is that in terms of actual practical self-defense, in a real-life situation, it's right down there roughly with Taekwondo and Tai Chi among the least practical martial arts.
Oh, you didn't go with the Krav Maga joke. I'm very disappointed in you.
No, I didn't, because Krav Maga, from what I understand of it, was actually created with kind of a pragmatic direction. But it's what I've always heard about karate. And yet we're portraying a world here where in the fucking valley, karate of all possible sports, of all possible pursuits here, in a world where Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a fucking thing, where Muay Thai kickboxing is a thing, is somehow the martial art that becomes as big in the valley as high school football is in Texas. Does this not strike anyone else as just entirely fucking bizarre? Because that one lady's comment just... And I finally just have to touch on this. I've been holding this back, looking for a good place for it. But one of my favorite parts of this show is something that I wager is not intentional, but it's so inadvertently meta that it's like you have these characters from this 1980s teen sports movie. One of the 1980s teen sports movies, mind you, who are just going about their business basically being the same characters they have always been. And they're doing so in this modern world that's just looking at them and just going, is there a name for what in the Smurfy blue fuck is wrong with you? and it's like they're just... The way this escalates is just this abject horror at what is a very much Karate Kid premise and tone that has just been airdropped into very real 2020. And they're just kind of afraid because they don't understand what's going on. Am I the only one who perceived this? Was I the only one who kind of slipped the crazy pills into the coffee?
I think I'd say probably the best way to describe that entire part of it, and this is kind of where I have to flip my brain into when I'm watching this show, is that in this case it's a feature, not a bug. It's kind of it goes to the suspension of disbelief. I mean, to go to maybe your first question about karate itself, I think there's still a lot of validity for karate as a martial art and as a system of self-defense. You need to definitely find the right instructor to do that. If I'm going to shout out right now, I haven't had the pleasure of training with the gentleman myself, but my instructor has and raves about him. But Sensei John Titchin, he's based out of the UK. He does a lot of very practical, kind of real application karate side of things.
Right.
Where they're getting into the point of like, part of his test for a student will that they will get a couple of guys in rubber suits to try and grab them, and then they have to fight their way out, which is a completely valid way of training people for self-defense. A lot of what we've seen in karate over the last 50 or 60 years is the fact that it keeps on getting more distilled and more changed from its original self-defense system into a system of sport and a system of self-improvement and things like that. But there are definitely still elements of karate out there that are good for self-defense.
Which is kind of why I wanted to ask David about this. Is David, from your experience, is karate like this big a deal over in Japan?
Overall, no. Like I've seen the odd karate dojo, but I would say as far as your sort of hand-to-hand martial arts, judo is by far the most prevalent. Like that's what the police train in, the self-defense force, I should say. It's kind of the military trains in that. Most schools will have a judo club. That's more probably the most widely used hand-to-hand martial art that they have over there. And just piggybacking a bit into some of the other stuff mentioned here is like Screen Junkies, like they made the Honest Trailers joke of, in a world where Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has not become popular and half the population is training because of MMA. So karate is actually like the only martial art in town. But also they kind of acknowledge how crazy it is, especially when when like Daniel's wife finally realizes the threat of Cobra Kai, and she's just sat at the at the kitchen table, like, yeah, we got to stop this dojo, and Daniel's like, yeah, see, it's it's not so crazy now, is it?
No, it's still crazy. You're just clearly no longer the only one who has gone off the reservation a few fries shy of a Happy Meal. Because I kind of wondered the same thing when I was watching the 2010 Karate Kid reboot, and here you've got this kung fu tournament of all things, and it has the atmosphere of Baby's First Kumite.
Yeah, I can't really comment on the Chinese stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, it kind of parallels this bit of, wow, you guys are really taking this far more seriously than any rational-minded person would have expected you to. Like I said, nobody expects Chopsaki West Side Story.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Everybody expects Chopsaki West Side Story.
Yeah, and I should also supplement a couple of my comments. Like, I train with people who do like competitive kickboxing and kumite style stuff, and there's a lot of really good skills that you develop in there. And these people I train with also do other stuff as well, so they're really well rounded. But in terms of stuff like to use some MMA examples, guys like Lyoto Machida and guys like Josh Thompson who really know how to manage their range and timing. That's a lot of what you see out of the prime values of modern karate.
Yeah, I forgot Josh Thompson. Machida, of course, came right to mind.
Yeah.
Here's the thing.
Also, I have to say this: judo. Why hit somebody with your hands when you can hit them with the planet?
Here's what I'll say. They made this movie back in the 80s because they were doing the Goijin, white guy being trained by the old Chinese master. Only he's Japanese. Doesn't matter. Who cares? The old Asian master.
Pronounced Gaijin.
Thank you. And it's a takeoff on that. And so, but you're sitting around and you're like, well, here we are in Los Angeles, California, and how can we bring that and modernize it, modern being the 80s, and make it something that everyone can identify with? Okay, local karate dojos. They're everywhere. People bring their little kids to go learn karate. So that's our in. And then it becomes a hit. Now they're trapped with this. They are literally stuck with this thing. And, once you've decided that you're going to take the characters from that world and you're going to do an extended series with them, and you're going to examine the role of the bully and the villain and the hero and do all of these things that we like this show for, you unfortunately have to also make a huge deal out of the karate, or you don't have a show. You don't have a show based on that IP at the very least. You can still do this. You can, if you have talented writers out there, you can write a show about shades of gray and the nature of heroes and villains. But if you're deciding you're going to shape an old IP into that sort of thing, you then have to make a big deal out of the thing the movie made a big deal out of. And it's funny. It's anachronistic, and I get what you're saying, Sean. It's like, why is this little portion of the world suddenly obsessed with karate? Because they have to be. The further they lean into it, the better it is. Because what are we all talking about? We're talking about how silly it is that they've leaned this far into it. But if you don't have a very fun and interesting show. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I just thought of the weirdest kind of philosophical question about combat systems. And just kind of go with me, because I'm flying by the seat of my pants here, because this just now occurred to me. Mark, in particular, you're a boxing guy, right?
Yes.
You're steeped in the history of the sweet science. So you've probably heard the supposition from a lot of analysts that where you're from kind of shapes how you fight.
Yes.
Okay. It's something that I remember. I remember Teddy Atlas talking about it in terms of, like, you'll see somebody who's from Philly fight differently from somebody who's coming out of California, which is different from somebody who's fighting out of the Bronx.
There's a common phrase that gets used. Yeah, there's a common phrase that gets used, like, oh, he's fighting Mexican or Mexican style. That sort of thing.
Right. But it's something where I kind of can't help but notice that when you think of where karate and a lot of other similar martial arts of the kind, like Taekwondo, Hapkido, like that, kind of where they're most popular, they really kind of tend to take root in the most suburban, kind of sanitized of settings.
That's where the money is.
Whereas a lot of the harder hitting, more practical martial arts sometimes, like Muay Thai, like boxing, you kind of tend to see those in lower income areas. Why do you think that is that, like I said, like karate, taekwondo, hapkido, and the like, just never quite kind of catch on in the same neighborhoods as, like, say, a boxing gym?
I can name 10 boxers who have gone on to make millions and millions of dollars. I don't know of any person in karate who has made a living at it besides Eric Bischoff. That's my answer. That's the bottom line.
Unless we're talking like actors.
No, what I'm saying is, as a competitive fighter within the discipline, boxers go on to make millions of dollars.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, boxers go on to make millions of dollars, and so it's worth it to open up a gym, in Brooklyn, and you get yourself a Mike Tyson, or you get yourself a Riddick Bowe, because they're going to go on to be world champion and bring prestige and money to your gym. You can't say that about. Two things. One, you can't say that about like karate dojos. Number one. Number two, you're talking about like boxing gyms that mostly young adults to adults work out in, whereas karate is something you can bring your 7-year-old to, and and maybe they stay with it, maybe they don't.
Age. Yeah,
yeah. They're not in danger of getting their head punched in, in the average karate studio. So, not many dads or moms are going to be like, I need my kid to do something active after school. Let me sign him up for the boxing class. They're going to want to sign him up for karate. Again, so, it's like where there's suburban money from, working class to upper class families pouring into karate dojos that are perceived to be safer, as opposed to, poor kids finding themselves in a gym to fight their way out of the ghetto.
Yeah, I was actually just about to say, while you were explaining that, I was thinking, okay, yeah, so boxing could kind of be a way to literally fight yourself out of poverty.
Right.
Same thing with Muay Thai as well. A lot of Muay Thai guys will start real young. I mean, I think I went to a Muay Thai fight about, nearly 9 years ago in Lumpini Stadium in Bangkok, and a lot of those were fairly young teenagers. And from what I understand, they'll stop fighting about 22, 23, and basically part of that is that they're fighting to get enough money to, one, help out with their families in whatever way they can, but also they're putting that money away for potentially some kind of post-secondary education, so they can improve their overall station in life as well. So I think that's part of it. I mean, this goes into the wild history of karate and things that are called karate. They even point out to that in this show, where you find out that Cobra Kai is actually Tang Sudo, which is a Korean art, and it's actually what William Zabka trained prior to taking on the role of Johnny. So that in a nod, they kind of gave that the I think it was a green belt or green sash. I think they have a different ranking system, but anyway, they use that, and a lot of what was happening, and you've seen this go cyclically in the martial arts, is that as something will trend through, everyone will change their name to align with it. So at one point, everything was called karate, even colloquially, and then at another point, a lot of stuff got called taekwondo, even though it wasn't taekwondo. There was a period in the 70s where Jeet Kune Do became everything because everyone wanted to be like Bruce Lee. You're now seeing, more MMA gyms and stuff like that pop up, and
whereas people used to just refer to all MMA as just UFC.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, even out of personal experience, I have been training multiple arts for over 20 years. I still have to stop my mom from calling it karate every time. But
that's actually
from the business point of view, like, business owners have changed this, and they go and there are starting to be less definitive discussions around what art you're training on, or there's less about saying specifically that is what you're training. You may still have a rank that says Shotokan at the end of the day, but you may not be advertising yourself as karate.
That's actually a great way to transition, unless Dave had anything he wanted to add, into talking about Kreese. They spend a majority of the flashbacks this season giving you his background. He was a bullied kid. He had a mentally ill mother. He went to Nam, which we already knew about, but they gave some background on that. He's given an opportunity to go on a mission. He freezes. He ends up getting them captured. He ends up having to nearly fight to the death with his superior, and chooses to murder him when he could have saved him. And that's also where him and John Silver, where John Silver playing the part of Chewbacca owes John Kreese a life debt. So I don't have a whole lot to add here. I liked it. You have to be very careful with a story like this, because Kreese works the best when he's. I don't necessarily need him to be mustache twirly, but I think the best Kreese we got this season was actually at that same meeting where she said, "I don't know what the fascination is with karate," where he's making him out to be the hero, and he is dragging. He is so passive aggressive and personality disordered, and dragging the wife LaRusso through the mud, and she doesn't have the wherewithal or the wit to combat it, so she looks like a complete asshole. That's the best villain stuff of this season for me. Is that personality disordered stuff that he does. But you get, you get a lot of his background. You get, the stuff in Nam. And as I was saying, you want to be careful. You don't make him too sympathetic. And I think they did any sympathy you might have started to have towards him gets thrown away when he kills the superior and, he kicks him into the snake pit. Hey, look, Cobra Kai, get it? Ugh. So I like. Yeah, I know. I liked it. I liked what they did with him. But I mean, it's not one of the things. It's not one of the arcs where I jumped out and like, oh, this is the meaty stuff I really enjoyed about this season. It was just kind of, it's fine, it's good, it's there. David, I'm gonna start with you. What did you think of the Kreese arc this season?
I mean, Kreese is just such a bastard in this season. It's hard to get past that. I do appreciate that they've at least tried to give him some backstory and explain why he is the way he is, other than just scarred by war. But it's just like, where does I want to know what is his end game here? Like where does he see this ending? Because I don't see there being any sort of resolution to this conflict other than Kreese murders everyone. I think, look, he had a perfectly fine. Let's be real about this. He had a business that he was running that supported him. He had a place to go and a purpose and a way to pay for food and shelter. And this kid Danny LaRusso and this crazy old Japanese man come along and took it all from him, from out of nowhere. And he's already not tied together too tight. So what's his end game? To get it all back and to make Danny pay for taking it away from him in the first place. Like if Danny just goes away and he could continue to run Cobra Kai the way he was running it, I think he's fine. I think he wins and he goes on about his life. Well, he tends to mention so often, like, I'm going to fix this snowflake generation sort of thing. So it almost sounds like, it seems like my best theory is he's so worked up over America losing in Vietnam that he's just taken this, never again attitude, and just, I'm going to turn every American child into a soldier.
Well, I hope not, because we've already got that movie.
Victory.
I hope not, because we've already got that series. It's called Rambo. So. Sorry, Dave, I cut you off there. Go ahead.
But it's just sort of this idea, when the next war comes, we'll be ready and we'll beat them, and there'll be no chance of defeat. But it's just kind of like you're talking about emotionally unstable high school kids in the suburbs, like kill your enemy at all costs is not a good philosophy to introduce into teenage melodrama. See Tori.
Yeah, we'll get to her. We'll get to her next, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, like you think that he would be more like, join the army if he wants to accomplish those goals, as opposed to take Cobra Kai. So, like, I still think there's more to unpack in terms of what's going on between Kreese's ears, but yeah, just how sly and slimy he is about the whole thing is just creepy. Like the bit where he goes to, in front of the council and he's, purposely using all the PC language, and sort of rubbing Johnny and Daniel's face in it, even though, we know from other things he said he like despises those sort of attitudes. Like, it's just, he's just, what a creepy guy. And like, I can't believe he would even use like the tournament as the final decider here. Because again, like, what happens if he loses? Is he going to give up? I thought defeat does not exist in this dojo.
Well, Andrew, let me ask you if you remember, when he's introduced in Season 2, doesn't he talk about how, after Johnny left and after the events of the Karate Kid 3, he lost the dojo and he just sort of drifted, and I think at one point, like, he was homeless?
Yeah, he was. I mean, he ran some of that cover story with, I wouldn't go train guys in Afghanistan and stuff like that. So, I mean, he definitely did bring that up as saying that he had lost his business at some point.
Right, and so I honestly think, from his point of view, Sean, he's just driven by revenge. Mm-hmm. He wants revenge on Danny LaRusso for taking away his fucking livelihood, which I don't think revenge is a good thing, but I understand, as Chris Rock would say. I understand.
John Kreese is John Bernthal as Frank Castle in The Karate Punisher. Coming 2021 to the fucking Valley. He's a man who doesn't know what to do if he doesn't have a war to fight. And I will say this, the backstory was legitimately one of my favorite parts of the entire season. It was an unexpected side trip, and I enjoyed the absolute living hell out of it. One thing, and again, I keep feeling the need to preface this. I don't think this was intentional. It could just be me kind of thinking like a hammer and seeing all the world as a nail, but feel free to chime in if you agree. I think it's kind of a right dead-on bullseye when he kind of ever so subtly plays up his veteran status.
Oh yeah.
At the meeting, because in our country there very much is absolutely that weird almost deification of every former enlisted man or woman. God, I lived for 4.5 years in Phoenix, and the Pat Tillman worship actually gets almost downright creepy at times. It really is sometimes like there are some people out there who will kind of play that up to excuse anybody from damn near anything. Hell, look no further than a couple of weeks ago, where certain outlets really, in terms of the one woman who was shot trying to invade the Senate chambers, what was the thing they played up? Not the multiple arrests, not the history of violence. Ah, yes, that she was a former Air Force veteran. Thank you, ma'am, for your service, you nanners insurrectionist, you. But it's, make no mistake, and I have no idea if you experience quite the same thing in Canada. If there's quite the same culture there, but here, it's not everybody does that, but there are certainly people who will absolutely readily do that, where a military service record of just about any kind of regardless of whether you're honorably discharged or not, will be seen as qualifications to be handed the keys to the kingdom. Whether you're talking about elected office or just about any other significant responsibility, you will be seen as an infallible voice of reason in some venues. If you were a fucking member of the Coast Guard, you will be seen as practically kind of a prophet. So again, I don't know if that was intended or not, but it was certainly something that I've kind of perceived from my experience.
You guys have any thoughts about what Sean's saying?
To a degree, I think there's respect for members of the armed forces and veterans who have served, but I don't think it's quite on the level you were saying, where it's just they can say nothing wrong. We must prostrate ourselves and go along with whatever they say. But certainly, there's a healthy respect.
Yeah, I mean, and in Mark, to any extent, was I necessarily exaggerating with that perception?
No, I think that there are instances where if you say, one of them being I was in the military, suddenly everyone is in deference to you. I happen to work in an environment where we arrest a lot of veterans for one reason or another, and boy, does that not exist. But in the rest of the known world, it's one of those things where, I think somewhat unfairly, people, like I said, they're in deference to military folks, whether they deserve it or not. And I think it's out of respect. They're giving their lives to defend the country, and people are like, you guys are heroes. But I think it can, like anything else, it gets taken too far and it gets taken out of context, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, like I said, it's the Pat Tillman thing, where so much of it is Pat Tillman was an American hero. He was a tragedy. He served his country with pride. His journals revealed he didn't want to be there and didn't think we should be, and he thought we were pretty much just following orders. He made a noble sacrifice. His country hung him out to dry.
Also, it's like he got no positive anything in the media. So I mean, that might have been the circles you were in, but everything I saw in the media was Pat Tillman's a moron. Go ahead, Andrew.
I was about to say, to touch on part of this conversation, I think Dave's definitely on point there. I'd say a lot of the kind of the cultural change and the respect and acknowledgement even of the military in Canada has probably changed more over the last 20 years with our involvement in Afghanistan. Definitely not quite to the level that is in the U.S., but I've become a big fan of the Cleared Hot podcast, which is hosted by a gentleman named Andy Stumpf. He's a former U.S. Navy SEAL, was actually in Development Group, more popularly known as SEAL Team 6, and he's quite honest about himself and about the military in a lot of ways. He likes to say, the best people I ever met were Navy SEALs. The absolute worst dregs of humanity I ever met were Navy SEALs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that tracks.
And he's very, and ironically enough, I think he actually mentioned that he ran into Pat a few times since they were both in kind of that community. Yeah, he was, I think, if I remember right, it was either in Afghanistan or they actually might have both been involved in the Jessica Lynch raid.
Dave,
well, and when it comes to I'm sorry, I just kind of want to bring it back around to Crease for a second, and
okay, that's
just
where I
kind
thought
of
we were
also
going.
say that what I kind of think needs to be said here is that, of course, they try to kind of, and they do this well, I think, is they kind of try to inject a little bit of sympathy into his backstory, and it's effective to a point. But thankfully, they also pull back a little bit and lean a little more into sorry about that, but there does come a point when we all need to kind of handle our shit, and it no longer becomes an excuse.
Anyone that didn't get the chance to talk about Crease, go ahead and just jump in and give your thoughts real quick before we move on.
I've got definitely a few thoughts on Mr. John Crease, who,
go for it.
Man, I find this man despicable. And a lot of that is because I'm going to be really honest. I've been very fortunate in the amount of time I've been involved in martial arts to be involved with some very good instructors. There's a really telling moment that I quite enjoyed at the beginning of episode 8 where they do like that triple cut in between the Cobra Kai, between the Miyagi-Do, and between the I can't remember what Johnny called Eagle Fang.
Eagle Fang.
And as much as they were all kind of telling their own story, I think from all of my experiences, and I've trained at different places with different philosophies, but when you go to what Danny and Johnny were saying, they were talking about coming at it from a place of confidence, from a place of love, from those things. And like I said, I've trained with a lot of different instructors. The ones who come from that place get good results, no matter what your philosophy is or what your philosophy or your technique or anything along that. They're out there to improve themselves and improve their students and just improve the world. When you listen to Kreese's speech, and this goes all the way back to his entire backstory, he's coming at it from suspicion, from hate, from violence, and you can see how that has affected his students. I mean, we talked a little bit about Hawk and how the exposure to that toxic personality has happened. I think the other thing that really strikes me about Kreese, and again, this is me being fortunate of not having to deal with this a lot, and if I have dealt with a personality, they generally go away as soon as you show them you can handle yourself. But there are groups on Facebook, one of which is Bullshit Martial Arts, which deals a lot with... no, this is actually a separate... Bullshit started out with that, but this is more of a dedicated group to Bullshit Martial Arts. And they have damn near phone books of guys like Kreese. Emotionally manipulative. They play up a whole bunch of correct or not or earned or not military resumes. A lot of it's stolen valor stuff. Emotionally manipulative. They'll pull people into legal spats to try and make them look bad. So I think that incident with Amanda, that's right out of that playbook. I even think with the way he manipulates Tori and well, I hope they don't take this season going this way because it'll be really unpleasant. But at least to say, a lot of these guys end up being predators. And a lot of cases, these are not guys that also can actually fight. There's been more than a few times where one of the trends that's happened is that challenge culture is back. So if two people disagree on the internet, one will challenge the other one. It'll generally turn into, fly to my city, and then they suddenly injure their shoulder and they can't. Because they know if they show up, they will get their asses kicked. And there have been cases where this has happened, and these guys have gotten their asses kicked. I mean, we're talking about reality versus that, but I mean, I see a lot of those really, really disturbing attributes, as accurate as they are, and that's why they're disturbing, increases a character. And I think it's effective. Martin Kove did a great job. I hate the character. I think he's fantastic in it. But I mean, and even with the Vietnam backstory, I mean, I thought it was a little cheesy. Like, I thought it was, the way it was executed was there. I think where it got him in terms of where he drives his philosophy from was good. But yeah, those are kind of my thoughts on Kreese as it goes. I'm looking forward to see where it goes for the next season as well.
All right, we're going a little long here, so I want to bring up this last character, and then after this, whoever else, we'll go around with whoever else you want to bring up and any other arcs you want to talk about, and we'll close out for the night. But we've mentioned her a bunch now. We got to talk about Peyton List, who plays Tori, who they brought on in the second season, who I haven't seen a whiplash from one character to another, to where they were doing something very wholesome. Like I said, Bunked and Jesse, to what she plays in Cobra Kai, since Miley Cyrus went from Hannah Montana to Black Mirror. Damn it, I had that in my head 20 minutes ago and stumbled the fuck right through it. All right, moving on. Anyway, Peyton List, I would not have pegged her as a great actress. I was looking at her Wikipedia before we got into this, and she's actually done quite a lot of voice roles, a lot of television, a bunch of movies. She's got a fairly decent resume to her. She has the best presence and the craziest Luke Harper fucking nonsense eyes I've ever seen on an actress. I mean, they used to. Sean and I did the show Orange Is the New Black, and they had a character called Crazy Eyes. She has Azusa Aduba has nothing on Peyton List. Her eyes are maniac. When she is stalking through the house, going, "Come out, Samantha! Come on, come get your beating," or whatever it is she says, and her eyes, like it's almost Who Framed Roger Rabbit like. She looks like Christopher fucking Lloyd. Remember me, Eddie?
And Uza Aduba existed to actually make you feel a sense of empathy for her.
No.
Peyton List exists to terrify you.
Yeah, she went to the Skeletor School of Villains. Jesus Christ.
Oh my God, it would be understandable if by the end of watching this series, before you shut the lamp out at night, if you just kind of took one little peek under the bed, just to be sure.
She should be like a poster girl for, like, you know, anti-domestic violence. Like, if you beat your wife, Peyton List will come to your house and kick your ass. A 45-year-old man, I'll fight anybody but Peyton List at this point, because she looks nuts. She is really good in this season. She is the most effective, I think, even more so than Kreese, because Kreese is, like, you know, like very, you know, he's slithery, he's slimy, he's manipulative. I use the phrase personality disordered. She is just outright fucking nuts this season. And it's so weird because, like, she has those moments where she becomes a real human being again. She's a real boy. You know, she's talking about taking care of her mom. She's like, I can't fucking do karate. I got to work. Like, I've been expelled from school. I got to work. I got to take care of my sick mom and my brother. Like, I don't have time for this. And there's that crossroads there for her where she's willing to just let this all go, because she has real life concerns and real life consequences to deal with from the fight. And, you know, she finds herself back into it again because Kreese comes and gets her and saves her. But, you know, and then she has the conversation with Miguel, and then she's got these bits with Robbie towards the end of the season where you know, like I said, she has a real humanity about her, but then she goes full Goosebozo, and she's terrifying. She's amazing. I love Peyton List in this season. She's one of the high points to me. Dave, I'm going to go to you first. What did you think of Tori this season?
Performance-wise, great. Character-wise, I can't say I like her that much. She's just too cartoony, like to say it. She's like something out of a He-Man cartoon in something that's supposed to somewhat resemble the real world. Other than her sick mother, it's hard to really feel any sort of sympathy or understanding for the character. And I think that's sort of her biggest problem is there's no nuance to her. There's no backstory that really makes us understand why she is the way she is, like why she feels the need to just, you know, try and kill anything that gets in her way, no matter what. And I think that ultimately just hurts the character where, yeah, she's just this cartoon villain who's just, you know, she's just this Terminator going through the show, yeah, killing everyone, or trying to. I
don't know. I like the fact they lean into the lunacy of her character. I think there has to be somebody on the show who's over-the-top villainous, because if not...
you realize we just talked about Kreese, right?
But that's the... yeah, but again...
Like, what I like about the show is that all the characters, even when they do stupid things or things I don't like, there's always a reason for it. You always understand, okay, I can see exactly why they're making this decision. It makes sense for their character, given their situation. Whereas Tori's just like, someone's flipped this kill switch inside her brain, and she's just going.
I'm going to make the case for... Hang on, I'm going to make the case for...
on that fire.
Yeah, Kreese is just like hammering that button.
Let me make the case for them leaning into her lunacy, and then I will accept whatever counter argument you guys have. But I feel like amongst the kids, I know you just said, but we have a crazy villain. His name is Kreese. Kreese is there for the adults. Kreese is there to manipulate the kids. There needs to be somebody amongst the kids who's a lunatic. And I like the fact there's at least one cartoon villain in this show. I think there's an element of levity and fun to it. And so, because if everybody... Because she's the only one that isn't playing in the shades of gray. She's awfully dark, you know? she's the most villainous person on the show. And I think it's okay then if you're going to write a character like that, who among all the people, she's the least sympathetic, including the crazy ex-military guy. I think it's okay for her to be over the top. Otherwise, the show becomes a bit too. Well, this isn't Downton Abbey. The show is not subtle. 20 minutes ago, we had a conversation about how this entire universe revolves around karate. It's okay for it to be a fantasy. Your counterpoint, sir, and then I'll go over to Andrew.
Oh, my counterpoint?
No, talking to David.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, again, it all sort of depends on the tone of the show, like what it is overall going for. Like if it's, just everyone's just a crazy karate killing machine, okay, fine, I can get behind that. But to have this one sort of psychopathic, single-purpose, kill-everything character in the midst of all this show where everything does have a reason, it doesn't quite match up. It's like if Daniel all of a sudden starts doing Kamehamehas, it's like, where did this come from? Like, okay, like, from just sheer insanity standpoint, yeah, that's cool, but again, it doesn't fit in with the rest of this universe.
Okay, I mean, that's a fair argument.
Yeah. And I can love nonsensical, crazy, batshit characters when, in the right show. Like, that's not an issue. It's just, she doesn't quite fit in with the rest of the world as it's been presented. She's just there. She's just this force of nature, as opposed to this fleshed out character that we understand and interacts with others, in a dramatically satisfying way.
Okay, what do you think, Andrew? And I'd like you to weigh in on one or my argument or David's argument, but also what were your thoughts on Tori beyond that?
I think I'm actually kind of down with Mark on this one, where I think she's a stronger character when they go full crazy with her. Because part of it is that because Peyton List does actually kind of bring that aura and bring that bearing that if you get into a fight with her, you may win, but you're not going to be happy at the end of it.
And leave a little bit of your soul in the ring.
Exactly. It is not going to be an easy fight, and she brings that presence really well, and she kind of plays that to the hilt. And I think on some level, I mean, maybe this goes back to my feelings about I almost would have preferred they left Kreese as a pure black hat, but I think whenever they try and do that too often, it starts to bring a little bit gray, and having somebody who is black and white, you just need that sometimes. And she plays it so well.
You can't have a guy play a heel for over a decade. People get bored with it. They want, and they fall in love with the character, even though that they're a heel, and then they want to cheer for them. This is the common problem in wrestling, right, Sean? Where it's like, you have somebody. Look at the NWO. They were a heel gang group that they called the cops on because it got so out of hand, and people were cheering for them. And it's just you can't. The thing with Kreese, and I'll let Sean weigh in here. The thing with Kreese is we've already seen him be the worst villain in this particular universe. There has to be room for somebody else, and you have to keep kicking it up a notch. And so while I get David's point of, at some point you're so crazy you don't belong in this universe anymore, but without her, all you have left is Kreese, and that's boring. Go ahead, Sean.
When it comes to Tori and Kreese, it comes down to this. Tori is what happens when you flick just a few too many violently lit matches at a dried up husk of a person who has been disenfranchised, trodden upon, and taken advantage of her entire life. What sets fire is going to burn out of control. Like I said, that's pretty much all. That's pretty much all there is to it. I don't excuse her actions, not by any means. Not as I definitely wouldn't excuse such actions for anybody in the real world. But Lord Almighty, when you take somebody from a background like hers, who has met with the kind of reception in her environment that she has, and then you just keep prodding them with incitement, eventually, what the fuck do you think is going to happen? You're sitting there and you're teaching somebody who already resents the world, that all of a sudden it's okay to start striking first, striking hard, and showing no mercy. Of course they're going to become unhinged. Of course they're not going to be a Machiavellian calculating serpent like Kreese. No, they're a baboon with a handgun. And you've just shown them which end is the fiery end and how the trigger works.
I'm going to say with you, Sean, we ran through most of the characters. I didn't bring up Robbie because I can sum up Robbie's arc in this thing is, I ran, I got caught, I'm getting beat up, I'm mad, I'm out, I've joined the dark side. There, Robbie. I don't know if that's fair, but of all the people in this season, including like the little, the little kids that are bouncing around from different dojos, I found him the least interesting.
You know what? I kind of realized that by the end of the season, he went from being one of the focal pillars of the first two seasons to all of a sudden I got to the end of episode 10 and I realized that he's all of a sudden really made the full heel turn at this point, and I was stunned to realize I just didn't give a shit.
Yeah, I was not heartbroken when he turned.
I simply didn't care.
Yeah, and I think, and like I said, the show's not, as far as much as we gush about the show, and it's one of the best shows written on television. There are some not great moments of writing, and I don't think they did a great job with Robbie this season. I'm going to go back to Sean again for any further thoughts on Robbie, and then if you guys have anything you want to add to that, go ahead. Go ahead, Sean.
I got nothing because there was so little investment. I mean, he spends. I mean, for a whole ass couple of episodes, he kind of becomes the MacGuffin, fueling another attempted reconciliation between Daniel and Johnny, and then he spends a good chunk of the rest of the season in jail, and then by the end of it, the Anakin arc is complete,
and he's killed all the younglings.
Damn it, Johnny, beat me to it.
He's sick as fuck of the sand everywhere. And he's getting head pats from Palpatine. To the point where I'm sure he's going to play some critical role in season 4, but fuck me if I care.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like he's going to show up and I'm just going to go, shit, you're still here?
I feel like they gave him nothing, this season, not as much as they gave the other characters, and then by the end of it, you're like, no, not Robbie, and you're like, who gives a shit? Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, not much for Robbie in this one. He's kind of there because he has to be. So the only real observation I could have is just how I think Daniel mishandled the whole thing with when he did confront Robbie about things. Like, instead of like, hey, Robbie, you're here. Thank goodness. Here's the police. Don't worry, I got this. This is kids already pretty skittish around the law. If it had just been like, oh, Robbie, I'm glad I found you. Okay, look, you need to turn yourself in. I know you're scared right now and you're worried about what'll happen, but if you run, you're going to be running for the rest of your life. Whereas you're a juvenile, at best manslaughter charge. If you just turn yourself in, they'll go easy on you. I got you a crack lawyer. You just do a few months in juvie. Karate, you'll be fine. And then you'll be out free the other side. What do you say? And then Robbie can say yes or no, and then we can go from there.
You are U-Law. You're nobody's bitch.
Yeah, it's just. I kind of just think by sort of forcing Robbie into that particular path without sort of trying to explain to him first, it kind of just, that's sort of what set him on that path. Whereas now it's just like, I already hate Johnny, now I hate Daniel. Hey, this priest guy's new, I'll give him a shot.
Won't somebody be my father? Go ahead, Andrew.
But Robbie, Cobra Kai is evil. From my perspective, Miyagi-Do is evil.
Only a Cobra Kai thinks in absolutes.
It's over, Robbie. I have the high ground.
Oh. All right, plugs.
Go
ahead.
As much as I care to say about Robbie.
Okay, I missed what you said there.
That is as much as I have to say about Robbie.
Perfect. Moving on. All right. Well, since you had nothing other than Anakin jokes to make about Robbie, which those were funny, I'm going to let you go ahead and have your opportunity to do, Burning Desires here. I think we covered it for the most part, but in case I missed something or there's something else you wanted to bring up, go ahead, Andrew.
I'm going to call it mainly the last episode, actually. I thought it was a really strong finale. I think there's two elements of this that caught me. I'm going to go to the obvious one first, which is and it's actually just coming on right now, which is the final dust up in Danny's house. I thought this was actually a really great fight scene. I mean, say what you will about the conversations we've had around styles and practicality and stuff. It's well choreographed. It's got some impact. And actually, it's got a really well integrated kind of, what you call your one shot that goes on for a couple of minutes all throughout this entire geography of the house, which is really well done. Plus, I'm not going to lie, my favorite Christmas carol is Carol of the Bells, so having that play in the background is kind of cool. Second part of this episode I absolutely love is actually the conversation at the party, particularly between Amanda and Allie. And I think it starts off with Amanda saying, "So have they told you about their dojo death rivalry yet?" or something along that line. And again, I've done martial arts for a long time. A lot of my friends have done martial arts for a long time. I have been a party to in conversations between spouses of martial artists about how silly we are.
Hey, I
thought it was a wonderful touch.
So I wanted to ask you, you're one of the combat sports fight experts on the network. This is in your wheelhouse here, and I wanted to ask you specifically about this. How would you compare the school fight to the house fight? Like what subtle differences were there? Which one did you think was better? What, if there's anything that you can sort of add to, for the people listening to the podcast, if there's something like, here's something you might not have known that you noticed, if there was anything at all.
I think I preferred they had a smaller cast for it, so I think they were able to work it a little bit better. I think the house fight at the end of 3 was a little better. I also think it was a little bit more of an interesting, the way that house is set up with having kind of those double courtyards and things like that for them to kind of shoot in and out of. So you were having to have that fight go on in multiple angles continuously because you had characters come in and come out and still be fighting in the background as well. And from what I could see, all the choreography was really, really on point. So I think that was probably the better one of the season. And I think even I'm watching it right now, and it's got both the main living room and then you've got the glassed off area. So you've got fights going on and choreography going on that whole time. And from what I can tell, a lot of it's really solid.
Yeah, I would love to know how they shot that, how many cameras they used, how many takes it took. Because it's not 1917 or anything, but there's not a lot of cuts either.
No, and I think I'm watching the one, I think it's kind of the second shot after it starts, and we're in a pure oneer where it is, everyone has their choreography, everybody's going, there's one cameraman, and he's basically doing the dance with them.
Yeah. David, the final fight, Burning Desires, whatever you got to say it now, or forever hold your peace.
Yeah. Probably the biggest complaint I can give about the first 2 seasons of Cobra Kai is they kind of go back to the same well a little too much. It's sort of like what Sean was saying before with the whole Patrick not quite getting it bit is, we don't need to see Johnny and Daniel's rivalry continue to not be resolved. We don't need to see more Miguel, Sam, love triangle with Robbie and Tori and all that. We've seen these stories before already done. We've seen these arcs. So I was really happy that it seems that finally at the end of this season, Johnny and Daniel have finally kind of acknowledged each other that, they're both kind of dicks and, it's time to put that sort of behind them and work together. So, for next season, I'm just kind of hoping that we progress the story forward. There's more interesting things that happen. We sort of stop retreading the same ground over and over again, other than the original Karate Kid movies, because that's the whole point of this. Again, I'm not quite sure how they're going to keep the story going until 6 seasons, if that is true, but I would hope that maybe 1 or at the most 2 more seasons they can kind of wrap everything up and get some sort of closure for everyone.
I know, I said it about The Mandalorian. I'm done with this. Please stop the show. Not that it ended badly, but you've told the story. Enough. I said it about The Boys. The story is told. Move on and do something else. After season 4, I pray to God this stops, because I don't want them to overstay their welcome. Go ahead, Sean. Your final thoughts, burning desires, etc.
For all my glowing opinions of this show, and with all due respect to Pat and Ronnie in particular and their ardent love of it, 6 seasons will be too many. 5 is too many. 6 is right out. You're at a point where you need about 1 more solid act to really round this out and put a bow on it. Any more than that, and you're edging into Genji Cohen territory of just having no fucking clue how to actually end.
You evoke the name, and now all I can think about is that one stupid season of Weeds that was really unnecessary.
Just one. You thought there was just one unnecessary season of Weeds? Just one. I know Netflix wants to give this a full 6-season run, and I admire that. But it's not too late to walk that back and not taint this show's legacy before this fucking becomes supernatural. You're running out of runway. You're running out of juice here to really end this at just the right time. To put it in terms of 2 shows that ended well, seemingly for good at the time, within about a week or 2 of each other. You're talking about turning left, and you have Breaking Bad, which ended precisely when it should have, and more or less exactly how it needed to. It didn't go on, in my opinion, an episode longer than it should have. On the other hand, you have Dexter, which went on a whole ass season longer than it should have. Please, Netflix and producers of Cobra Kai, I'm begging you, come to your senses. Realize when a story has been told. Give it 10 more episodes. Hell, maybe get an extended order for 12 or 13 if you feel the need to embellish a little bit. But just trust us on this. The time is coming to quit while you are still ahead. I don't want to see another several seasons going on of just the Karate Kid, the new class. Just please, just go out on the highest note that you possibly can.
Okay. I think that wraps it up. Wraps it up for our review here of Cobra Kai Season 3. It ended, to the point, it ended exactly where it needed to end. I actually thought they were going to get there a lot sooner, with Johnny and Danny coming together with the joint dojo to take on Kreese and a fine set of bullies that he's coalesced. But, that's the hook for Season 4. These kids are all in high school. I think they're close to graduating. And you're going to run into the same problem you ran into Ralph Macchio. Peyton List is going to be 40, and they're going to be like, come on, you're still the Karate Kid. No, I'm not. So... let's not do that. Let us, when these kids are no longer old enough to be called Karate Kids, let's end the fucking show already.
What was the Family Guy joke about Rocky going to fight some alien on the moon?
Well, there was the Spaceball joke, and now Pongo's review of Rocky 5,000. All right, Andrew, what do you got going on in your world?
Perfect. I have the distinct privilege of training at Esteem Martial Arts and Havoc JKD here in Calgary. You can find them on Facebook and major social media, and also at esteemandhavoc.com. One of the big announcements that the program, or that the studio's in the process of rolling out, is the new Havoc U initiative. So if you go on there, you're going to see some of the initial information on the program that our head instructor Jay Cooper is going to be rolling out. It's going to be it's a new online training paradigm. It's really going to be some great stuff. Havoc, battle tested, battle proven. Also, as I mentioned them tonight, if anyone is interested in some really high quality karate in terms of kind of a self defense paradigm, go definitely check out Sensei John Titchin. He's based out of the UK. He's written a few books, and he's also got his own training going on at the same time. And other than that, I am all set. Thank you very much as always, gentlemen.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead, Dave. What's going on in your world?
Still editing the Star Trek podcast. It's coming.
When are you doing another one of those, and what are you doing, and who are you doing it with? Tell me all the things, Dave.
Okay, scheduling's not happening until I get this one out. The next one would be doing all the J.J. Abrams era Star Trek movies / Simon Pegg. So, Star Trek, just Star Trek, then Into Darkness, then Beyond. I assume, Andrew, you'll be up for that, and we'll have to see who else is in.
I'll do them just so I have an excuse to watch those with my daughter, so I can see her yell at the screen when Kirk is acting all chauvinistic.
I will come to defend 1 and 3 and bury 2.
I think you and me just shitting all over 2 would be a lot of fun, actually. And I can't talk enough about the use of sabotage in anything. It's the greatest song ever written. Beastie Boys Sabotage.
I like the use of sabotage. I know Robert hates it, but I love the use of it in those movies. I
think it's great. Slipknot and Korn did a cover of it that I listen to sometimes on my way home when I've had a bad day. It's a simple yet great song. It is not hyperbole, Sean Comer, to say that the Beastie Boys Sabotage is the greatest song in the history of music. I may have been a bit.
No, I'll grant you that one. I would grant you that one.
Oh, really?
I will take off. Well, I mean, opinions are what they are, and that's certainly a great one to list as your favorite song. I mean, by all means, you are welcome to your share and mine of that Korn and Slipknot cover. But yeah, I just have no interest in it whatsoever.
Your point, sir.
Hey, for all sorts of miscellaneous shenanigans and ramblings about music, gaming, hockey, professional wrestling, the odd political tangent, and food porn, follow me on Twitter at Comer Codex. And speaking of gaming, I have revived my Twitch channel. I'm in the process of reviving it, rather. I've done a couple of streams this week, and my next one is going to be tomorrow night. That is January 22nd, for those of you out there. From 7 to 10 p.m. Central Time, I'm going to be playing a few more hours of Kingdom Hearts. We are close to wrapping that up so that I can get to BioShock 2, which brings me to another project, and that is that now that my batteries are finally recharged and I'm refocused, I am revisiting Andrew and I trying to put together Long Road to Ruin Gaming Edition. And when that is finally ready to debut, BioShock is indeed going to be our very first series that we're going to be doing. The entire trilogy: BioShock, BioShock 2, and BioShock Infinite. Coming when I can hustle up and actually get all 3 games finished. Coming up in February, I have got a rather full slate of podcasts coming to the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. First off, on February 2nd, I am going to be joining Mark and the crew to review one of my favorite WWE pay-per-views of the year, the Royal Rumble. A couple days later, on February 4th, I am going to be breaking down the new release from Weezer on the Metal Hammer of Doom. February 11th, it's the Korean space epic Space Sweepers, which I absolutely cannot wait to sink my teeth into. February 22nd, I'm going to be on Source Material to help review Ed Brubaker's Scene of the Crime. And then rounding out the month, on February 24th, I am Iron co-host, because I am pulling double duty, 2 shows in one day. It's Only God Forgives for, is it On Trial, Mark?
Correct.
Okay, I got it wrong last night. On Trial, Only God Forgives, and then I am going to be joining the lads again to review one of the last stops on the road to WrestleMania, Elimination Chamber.
In the meantime, in between time, Sean and I actually did an on trial for the Karate Kid 2010. The Canadian boys that joined us tonight were also on The Mandalorian review, Season 2. And we all made the room hot, wet, and sticky when we talked about Luke Skywalker showing up. Oh, the Luke!
Hey, wait a minute, Mark, we forgot one. I just remembered. The next episode of TV Party Tonight.
Oh yes, I'm getting there.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Myself and Chris Bailey reviewed Impact Hard to Kill, starring our friend and yours, Kenny Omega. Wherever he goes, we go. And we started off the week, myself, Chris Sheehan, and Robert Winfrey reviewed Star Wars Bounty Hunters, Volume 1, Galaxy's Deadliest. Next week, myself and Alexis Haina are doing the last 3 issues of The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina comic, 6, 7, and 8. Sean, Alexis, and I will be talking The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina Part 4, Double Trouble, hot diggity. The Metal Hammer of Doom finally debuts in 2021 with Labyrinth, Welcome to the Absurd Circus. And then on Thursday, we've got a double shot. Myself and the Podsman will be turning new pages in political correctness as we take on a WWE special featuring Indian talent. Superstar Spectacle. I'm sure that'll go... If you've heard our wrestling reviews before, I'm sure that'll go very well. And... But it's not all insulting. During the evening, myself and Alexis Haina will review Part 1C of the Looney Tunes HBO shorts that will be coming out, actually. That came out today, as a matter of fact. You can watch those right now if you're listening to this. That's it. That's all we got going on for the time being. I want to thank everybody for joining me tonight and talking Cobra Kai on this extra long edition of TV Party Tonight. For Andrew Graham, David Wright, and Sean Comer, I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and